this kind of like, does yoga mean something? Like, is that a word that actually has like a bigger meaning? Like when people say, oh, I'm going to yoga, it could mean so many different things. Like you're naming different practices. We've already talked about like Mysore, Ashtanga. I know there's Kundalini, there's Bikram, like there's a million things, but yoga in and of itself does mean something and it has a presence. Like, can you expand on that? Can you share what that is?
Absolutely. So yoga, like we tend to think of it like, okay, if I'm doing like that vinyasa movement, like there's a chaturanga in yoga or a downward facing dog or a warrior pose, that must mean I'm doing yoga, or shavasana or whatever. Child's pose. Yeah. You think of these movements, but you know, you could be moving through this series of movements and no actual yoga is going on.
Yeah.
Or you could be doing something totally different that doesn't even include like a downward facing dog in it. Like you're going surfing or going to the gym, and you could be doing yoga or just cooking or reading a book, right? So yoga is the practice of getting to know yourself and becoming connected. It translates as union, or depending on what translation you look at, or unity or connecting mind and body, right? So you're connecting mind and body in some way.
Welcome to Beyond the Reps, where we talk about all things your physical therapist and trainer forgot to tell you. I'm one of your hosts, Whitney Stevenson. I am a gym owner, a celebrity trainer, and a personal training coach.
And I'm Dr. Hannah Shays, your co-host. I'm a physical therapist and practice owner. So today we have a special guest with us, Shelby Hunzinger of Village Yoga and Jupiter Yoga. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me. I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here.
We are so excited. I am selfishly excited because some of these topics we don't necessarily get to talk about just in our friendship. So it's nice to access your brain in a different way, not just paddling behind you or next to you.
You're usually paddling in front of me, don't lie.
Also, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
I know you just celebrated a big milestone birthday.
Yeah, the big 4-0.
I actually kind of wanted to talk to you about that because it could be a touchy subject for people, but how do you feel about, reaching a kind of a milestone birthday? Being in the fitness space, being a yoga instructor. We'll go into all that detail a little bit later, but I just wanted to know.
The number itself, like leading up to it, was a little bit daunting. I'm like, God, really? But now I just feel like, you don't feel any different. Each year you get older and you feel the same. But yeah, I'm like more celebrating it now. So
Good.
I feel like, why not celebrate life? You know?
So. That's kind of how I felt. My last milestone birthday, I guess, was like 7 years ago. But I think everyone around me was like, your life's going to change. You're going to feel so different. Once you reach that age, it's like over.
Yeah.
And then I got there and I was like, well, I'm now stressing because everyone else is making me feel like the world is going to end.
Like all of a sudden these things are going to start happening.
Yeah. Like, is my head going to explode? Like, what's going to happen? But nothing happened. And I actually felt better. And I think I came into like a better decade. And I'm a firm believer in that, like, with each milestone, year or whatever you're celebrating is like, it's just going to bring more abundance and like a better life.
Absolutely.
More experiences. And that's cool. I like that perspective. Yeah. No more dreading. No more daunting numbers.
No
each number is like a celebration of being able to be on this crazy marble and traveling around the sun at however fast we're going in the universe.
I've definitely heard you say that before, and I love that phrase. This marble that we're sitting on is just accelerating very fast.
Yeah. I love those, like, I see them online on social media sometimes, and it's like, remember you're here, and it's like a picture of the galaxy in space, and it's like, oh yeah, we're there. We're like a tiny dot of dust on that, flying around.
We're careening through space.
Yeah, careening through space. We don't even know how fast we're traveling right now.
Brings things right into perspective, right?
For sure.
Mm-hmm. So we brought Shelby here today because we want to dive more into how movement is medicine for the body and also the mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whitney and I are firm believers in the methodology of mind-body connection and just good movement. It's how we teach and help other people to overcome injury, learn to become stronger, and prevent chronic disease to enable people to live a longer and fuller life.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? To be able to be on this earth a little bit, to be on our marble a little bit longer, but also be capable while we're here. And definitely, I think yoga is a part of movement and a big part of like a Western movement now that people really want to dive into. So what better expert than our local yogi guru, Shelby. So
how did you two meet?
I'll let Shelby start.
Whitney and I've known of Whitney for a long time in the area. I was always very impressed and heard great things about her. But I think we really actually met through paddling, through my fiance. Yeah, a lot of things happened.
A lot of things happened
in 2025. Yep. Kind of a banner year. But Whitney was paddling with Jeremy, and I started diving in a bit to paddle with Jeremy, which initially, I would just go cruise and look for manatees, whatever. Go slow. Didn't really know what I was doing and hated any kind of condition. I was like, I'm not going out today. There's waves, there's wind. And, he had a really good approach and teaching it more of a technique and I was like, there's a fitness component to this. That makes sense. I get it. And then I met you at one of the practices and I think we just kind of clicked and
we clicked.
Yeah. Became friends.
Yeah. I was getting into paddling and it was kind of the fringe year after COVID. It was 2021, I think. And it was something to do that was outside, that was competitive. And I remember initially really liking stand-up. When we're saying paddling, if you're listening to this in Montana, who knows, but we mean stand-up paddleboarding. And now any craft where you're paddling, but mainly Shelby and I are talking about stand-up paddleboarding. I got into it to kind of connect me to the area, because I'm from California. I was very connected to nature when I was growing up, and I didn't feel that because I spent so much time in the gym. I had no other connection. So as COVID kind of was fringing out, I decided, I really want to try this. I feel like it's gonna I don't know, I'm gonna plant some roots that way. So I was doing paddling, and then I met you and instantly felt super connected. And I always share with people too, I'm like, whenever I'm around Shelby, I just feel better. And I love that. I'm like, be around people that make you feel better. What a concept. Don't have friends that make you feel worse. Have friends that make you feel better.
Well, if they make you feel worse,
feeling is reciprocal. So yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, I met Shelby.
How did you guys meet?
I met Shelby because of you, and you didn't even directly introduce us. You just mentioned Shelby's really cool. So I knew that she was kind of in the area, and I was looking to just connect with more people in Tequesta and Jupiter. And I was like, I'm going to go to one of her classes. I don't care what class it is. And it just happened.
She just needs to be teaching.
Yeah. It didn't matter what it was. And she happened to be subbing when it worked for my schedule. And it was one of the freaking hardest classes ever. Yoga sculpt, right?
I was subbing yoga sculpt for another teacher. And I think you messaged me I'm going to come to your class today. I'm like, okay. I don't usually teach this one. And I do regularly now. I was like, all right, cool. And we talked about, doing some workshops on movement and physical therapy and how it relates with yoga and what we can incorporate in our practice to be a little bit more aware of what we're doing movement-wise. And I don't know, I think you bring a lot of cool, good things, to the fitness community and the yoga community. And we clicked too.
Yeah, Hannah has a really good blend of Western medicine, but also Eastern influence. So
throw some woo in there too.
A little, you gotta throw a little woo. You gotta have some crystals, there's gotta be a little bit of actual grounding.
Wearing my clear quartz when I treat and touch people.
Yeah, that was what, I've asked you, I think it was the first thing I asked you. Because I noticed it. Yeah, I noticed your quartz.
Oh my God, yeah. So. Because basically when I worked in stroke rehab, one of my physical therapy assistant, he was a Reiki level 2 practitioner. And he said, when you go out on your own and you're touching people and you're going into their houses, you need to have clear quartz on you. And it basically just keeps their energy off of you.
From
so you don't absorb
permeating
it.
your cells.
Yeah, exactly. I think it works pretty good.
I think, I mean, you would know the most because you're so hands-on with people, but I like that about Hannah a lot. It's her blend.
Definitely.
She's got a good blend.
She does have a good blend.
Shelby, can you tell us a little bit about your background, like to Tequesta, like how long you've been there?
I think she was formerly known as like the Tequesta princess, right?
It's a little nickname that a friend of mmine gave me, is the VOT princess, the Village of Tequesta princess. But all kidding aside, I am born and raised in Jupiter, Tequesta, Florida. So I've been here my whole life.
It's like a diamond in the rough around these parts. Not a lot of people are born and raised in.
Yeah, they're not a lot of us.
Yeah.
But we're few and far between. And then that whole like how much of a local are you? I was born and raised. Well, I'm 5th generation. Whatever. But yeah, I've been there a lot. So definitely have a love for where I grew up. It's a special place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a special place. When did you start practicing yoga?
Oh, so I started practicing yoga. I came to yoga because I was pregnant with my second daughter, and my first, who was born a year and a half earlier, she, I was always like a runner or like did gym workouts and that sort of thing. And then I noticed, it just wasn't agreeing with my body when I was pregnant. So I was looking for something a little bit more gentle. And I literally turned on, and we joked a little earlier about how old school I am because I literally got lost on my way here and, print things off of the computer sometimes too, but we're going back.
She
old
signs
school.
checks also.
Yes, I write checks
at the grocery store.
No, I don't. Not true.
Not true.
But might as well be.
Yeah. Not against it.
Which is funny because you're good at Instagram.
I don't know if I'm that good. I have to ask my tech savvy friends, for what's happening. I can't work my phone. Anyway, the cable on demand programs for like fitness, like you can like plug in, like, oh, I was looking for this. I found like a yoga like on the TV back in the day, back in like 2006, 2007. And I was like, oh, yoga. I could probably do that. Had no idea what I was doing, just monkey see, monkey do, watching the TV. And there, sometime after I had my daughter, a friend of mine was like, oh, you should come to a class with me. And I was like, all right, I'll go to a class. And, I know what this is. This isn't like that hard. And I really want to go for a run, like that's what I love to do is go for a run and get it, a very intense physical workout. Well, she took me to this class and I was immediately humbled. And I knew from that very first class that was something that I wanted to learn more about. I was like, there's something to this. Like, this is hard, but I didn't think it was hard. And when somebody's like got their eyes on me and my alignment and, whatever pose it is, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Or what is right or what is wrong? Who knows? We'll get into that later. But there was a challenge to it that kind of like hooked me, I would say. And I wanted to learn more about it. And probably something beyond just the physical challenge, but yeah, that's when I started, 2006, 2007 time. But it took me somewhere around, I don't know, 10 years, 12 years later to actually decide to teach. I think about 10 years later, I actually stepped in
2016,
2015, so 9 years.
Okay.
My math is bad. Sorry.
Right.
But
she's going to move her abacus to make sure she's doing it right.
Yes. Another bead went over to the left. We've got 2015 I stepped into yoga teacher training at Yoga Palm Beach with Karen Burnett and Lizzie Moore, if you're familiar.
Ooh, yes, I know both of those ladies. They're awesome.
Yep. And trained under them and immediately started teaching. And so that was my beginning. Continued on, did a second teacher training about a year later at Native Yoga, and then some apprenticeships, an apprenticeship under Angelique Sandus, who was teaching at Yoga Path Mysore style Ashtanga yoga at the time, which I learned very quickly, or fell in love with very quickly. It's like a very regimented practice. And
This is Mysore.
This is Mysore or Ashtanga style yoga. It's kind of like Bikram, where it's a set sequence, but not like Bikram yoga.
Just
More
similar in that
movement,
it has a sequence that you follow
Yes.
in order to achieve like a certain result or a certain feeling.
Right. So it is a set series. So I apprenticed under her, learned how to teach that style in the Mysore room, with the intent to go to India.
Okay.
So I wanted to learn under a specific teacher who recently passed away, Sharat Joyce. He passed away this November.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know that your teacher passed away.
Yeah, it's hit me a little harder than I thought it would,
Wow.
actually. Like, I only studied with him a couple of times, but, for a good, he made an impression.
Yeah. When
And-
somebody gives you a gift like that, I mean, unfortunately for me, I've had a lot of horrible coaches and teachers, but I can appreciate the fact that when somebody does give you a gift, even if it was not a lot of time with them, it can feel really almost like a sense of like abandonment when you lose them, because it's like, man, like I was counting on that pillar that was like holding me to that, and now it's on you to like hold up what that person gave you.
Definitely, and even like a sense of regret, because I always intended like, I'll get back there and see him, or
Back to India.
Yeah, or study with him here. He was just in Miami like the weeks coming up until his death, and I was like, nah, I'm not going to go see him this time. And then I was like, oh geez, man, like now I don't have that opportunity. So yeah.
So just to kind of quickly summarize, you started teaching in 2015, went through teacher training, did a few apprenticeships, did another teacher training, kind of like in the local Palm Beach County area.
Yeah.
So you're with like really good teachers. You had a desire to go to India. Was there something driving that, or did you just go, was it because you were in kind of the yogic circle that you were like, oh, I'm going to go and explore this further? Or what was kind of your inspiration behind the India trip?
My inspiration behind going to India, a couple of things. One, I really was interested in learning more and wanting to teach Ashtanga style yoga. It had a great effect on me. I progressed physically through that practice. That's one thing, but it also like had a different kind of connection for me. I felt very like, I don't know if I want to say like spiritually, but like it had a effective change on me.
And Ashtanga is
The
sequence?
Yeah, so it's a very regimented practice, which there's no escaping from. So the things that you want to avoid, there's no
can't.
avoiding
You have
them.
to
You
face
have to face
it.
it. And
Emotionally.
all of the above,
in the
physically, emotionally,
I've
everything.
never done Ashtanga. I just know Yin and Vinyasa.
It is
And Yoga Nidra.
It is
And flow.
It is a vinyasa style. So there's that, plank, chaturanga, up dog, down dog, but it's there's 6 series. So there's a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. The primary series is usually what you'll encounter in like a lead format, and then there's this Mysore style where you learn to build upon each posture. So they go deeper. In technique and all. So I wanted to learn more about this and teach this particular style of yoga. So I sought out the place where it's studied in South India.
Where your teacher was.
Where Sharat was,
Okay.
yeah. So you have to been practicing under authorized teacher for X amount of time. So I learned under Angelique, who's an authorized Ashtanga yoga teacher. And then it's kind of like applying to, go study. This application is kind of like signing up online to see if you make it into the lottery of going to like Chattajack or like your favorite concert, like a Taylor Swift concert or whatever. You sign in, you register, and okay.
It's almost like applying to college, essentially, right? You're sending in what you've done and your credentials, and then being like, well, hopefully they greenlight me. Yeah.
Or do they fill up instantly? So I applied with 3 other women that we were all practicing at Yoga Path together, Chelsea Gage and Brianna and Liz Carson, we all applied together. We all got in.
That's amazing.
So, you know, traveling to India can be pretty daunting. It's this place where, like, I don't know, your parents are like, do you really want to go to India?
I don't even know how you get there, other than a long plane ride.
It's a long plane ride.
But I think it's multiple, correct?
We changed planes in Qatar,
Yeah.
which is a little country in the Middle East near Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
We changed planes in Qatar and hopped on the next flight and landed in Bangalore, India. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie with Julia Roberts. Oh gosh,
Eat, Pray, Love.
Eat, Pray, Love.
Mm-hmm.
And she lands in India. She's in the rickshaw and it's sensory overload. It's whatever they depicted in that movie
Is exactly when you land in India.
Spot on.
Wow.
So, you know, we get all squared away and into our apartments. We all stayed separately in separate places. And we studied there. We stayed there for a month and a half. Brianna, she ventured on to like Thailand and Bali and did like the whole,
Oh, so cool.
you know, touring of the area. And yeah, it was
Not White Lotus style.
not White Lotus style. I'm only in the first episode, so I can't tell you. You know? I'm not up to date with it.
Well, I have a question for you. Can you just give the listeners from your perspective how yoga specifically contributes to overall health? And it can be, you can do the physical and the mental and the spiritual, all of that.
Lord. Yeah, like where do we begin? So
It's very open-ended.
yeah. So, I mean, physically, I think just thinking back to that very first class that I walked into, and this is so cliche, and I talk about it a lot in yoga teacher training, and reminding the trainees when they come into class, like, do you remember that very first class where you were in downward facing dog and the yoga teacher's like, this is your resting pose, and you're like, bitch, please.
Like, what are you talking
This is
about?
no resting pose, you know?
My shoulders are on fire. What is happening? Why are my hamstrings screaming?
Right. So, or chaturanga. Oh, am I doing it right? Well, I don't know. So this, you know, bringing first you're and then you keep going and okay, now downward facing dog doesn't suck so bad. And then maybe eventually it actually is a resting pose. So you're building this physical strength and endurance in your body to be able to hold something that you thought was just pure torture, and it becomes a rest, right? So there is that physical strength or endurance or whatever you want to call it that builds in your body through consistent practice. And just being aware of your alignment, proprioception. You know, a lot of times there are places you'll practice in certain styles where there's mirrors in the room, which is great, but also just being able to know where your body is without being able to look, right? There's that too. So knowing where your body is without using your eyes.
Yeah. It's going within, but
and feeling alignment.
yeah, but if in a physical way, not in necessarily. I mean, yes, we're going to talk more about that, but I think there is an element of yoga where you're going within physically. You're tuning in physically, like what you're saying. Where are my hands spread apart? Are my heels lifted?
Right.
Do I know the difference between, you know, pushing my pointer finger into the ground or whatever? It's like a physical tuning.
And then you think you're in alignment in something like twisting triangle, and some teacher walks up and moves your hips. You're like, holy shit, I was way over there. Like, wow.
Like, what was happening?
Oh. Am I allowed to cuss? Sorry.
No,
Yeah,
you
you're
are.
allowed. We're allowed. Color and cussing is
Color
allowed.
So, yeah, and then you're like, yeah, I didn't know I was all the way over there. And it can be very humbling in that too. But yeah, the physical benefit, learning where you are, learning how to move so that you don't wear and tear on your body in certain ways. So you can do this a long time and continue to function. And Ashtanga, if you've ever taken a class, I know that Hannah said that you haven't, but there's a lot of these vinyasa movements, plank, chaturanga, up dog, down dog. I think I counted somewhere between 50 and 55 and half primary, and it got up to close to 80 in the full primary sequence. So that's like 80 push-ups basically. Yeah. And if you're
doing very physical.
Yeah, if you're doing this 6 days a week,
it's rigorous.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And you can wear on your body. So if you're not in an alignment, a proper alignment, you're going
to meet some resistance. Yeah. I definitely think for me, I started doing yoga when I was very young. I was in high school, and it was like as a complementary exercise to swimming. So, and I was really fortunate. I grew up with a studio it was a Bikram-based studio, which is a series. You do the same movements every single class.
In an unbearably hot room.
But this particular place also offered like a half series. So they did, I think it was like a 45-minute, or no, it was a 60-minute, and you only did the standing sequence once.
Instead of twice.
And then you would go down on the mat. But regardless, I was like this physical, crazy ADHD teenager trying to do yoga. I have no idea what meditation is. And it was almost the physical stress allowed me to meditate. Because if I was paying too much attention to like what my brain was saying, like, I want to run out of this room screaming, like they have to tell me when to drink. I'm so thirsty. I'm sweating. I need to scratch my eye. That person smoked weed in front of me and it's wafting back in my face. Like I was going nuts, right? If I let myself, and I noticed it, I think I obviously was encouraged by a teacher at the time to like, hey, don't notice what's going on around you, notice what's going on within you. And I
Keep your eyes on your own mat.
Exactly.
Right?
That was like one of my very first times where I felt like I was like, oh, I'm touching meditation, but I needed that big physical push to get there. So I kind of really like that about yoga, is that sometimes you access this physical thing first.
But how lucky for you to walk in at that young age.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Like,
I mean,
a lot of us don't find this until like late adulthood.
Yeah, I feel
too.
I started 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I think a barrier, like for me in college and high school, was, and this is for most people, you know, there a lot of studios don't have introduction classes. Some in the area do, but like most of them don't. And so a lot of people feel like, well, I don't know how to do it, so I guess I just won't do it, because they're too freaked out to be seen by other people or look stupid. But I like what you guys just talked about with the strength and the proprioception, like the mind aspect, because I think a lot of people just think, I'm not flexible, I'll just go to yoga. And it's so much more than just like being bendy.
Right. Yeah. And there is a certain element with, you know, like, yeah, if you're not flexible, then you should come. But also, if you are flexible, there are ways to work in support into your body. So on the physical level, but it's more about just being like physically flexible. It's about like mind flexibility. So as we learn to touch our toes, if we're that stiff person, it's not about touching your toes, but it's about that when you meet that resistance or you smell the weed coming off of the person in front of you, like what's going on in your mind, and observing it, or like learning about yourself on the way down to touching your toes or on the way up to balancing in a handstand. So the physical part of the practice is like a very real, present representation of what could be going on in our mind if we're open to that, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, learning those lessons through the movement.
Yeah.
Kind of like my, you know, parental figures maybe growing up said, oh, geez, you're that kid that's got to learn by the seat of her pants, aren't you? Well, yeah, you know, like
I do.
Learning through the physical isn't such a bad thing. And sometimes we can give it a bad name.
Yeah. Or if it doesn't if you kind of get stuck in the physical and don't tie the connection to what's going on in your heart or in your mind. Right. This kind of like, does yoga mean something? Like, is that a word that actually has like a bigger meaning? Like when people say, oh, I'm going to yoga, it could mean so many different things. Like you're naming different practices. We've already talked about like Mysore, Ashtanga. I know there's Kundalini, there's Bikram, like there's a million things, but yoga in and of itself does mean something, and it has a presence. Like, can you expand on that? Can you share what that is?
Absolutely. So yoga, like we tend to think of it like, okay, if I'm doing like that vinyasa movement, like there's a chaturanga in yoga, or a downward facing dog, or a warrior pose, that must mean I'm doing yoga, or shavasana, or whatever. Child's pose. Yeah. You think of these movements, but you know, you could be moving through this series of movements and no actual yoga is going on. Yeah. Or you could be doing something totally different that doesn't even include like a downward facing dog in it, like you're going surfing or going to the gym, and you could be doing yoga or just cooking or reading a book, right? So yoga is the practice of getting to know yourself and becoming connected. It translates as union, or depending on what translation you look at, or unity or connecting mind and body, right? So you're connecting mind and body in some way. It's the observation of your mind and your tendencies, getting to know yourself on a deeper level. So, going to the gym can be yoga.
I mean, this is literally like, I'm so excited because this is exactly why I do what I do as far as training and like personal training, and like what I like to inspire people to do is to use training, whether it's actual going to a yoga class or a Pilates or, rehab homework, is like to use those moments as a way to deepen the relationship you have with yourself. For me, doing something physical it was just easy for me to access the relationship I have with myself, because I could hear myself talk to myself. Am I going to pick this up? How am I going to do this? How am I coaching myself through those moments? And that is what I'm so passionate about, is using training in whatever way it is to like, hey, you have a dedicated amount of time a day to work on the relationship you have with yourself.
Right.
Like, versus all the distractions that are going on in our life and like being there for other people, but having your training, your physical movement be that. And I didn't know that yoga meant union. I had no clue, but that's really amazing. And that's kind of what I use yoga for. Like, I've been all over with it. At first I used it to get better at swimming, and then I used it because I didn't know how to work out, and that was like the best way to work out for me. And then now I'm using it as like a way to do something that's not in the gym, and to also develop the relationship I have with myself aside from what I'm doing in the gym, which is really cool.
I like that you said reading a book could be yoga, because I have this one patient who, he's an auto mechanic and he spends time in all these set positions working on cars. And I told him, you should try to start doing yoga because it helps you move through the, full range that you have available to you that you're not doing on a daily basis because of work. And he said, I do yoga. And I was like, oh, where do you go? And he was like, oh no, it's riding my motorcycle.
Yeah.
So he actually does not go to yoga class, but I guess he was right. He is still probably doing yoga, riding his motorcycle.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to look a certain way. I think it's, it's beyond that. There's definitely some physical benefits to doing any kind of movement, and yoga has a lot of that too, for sure. So,
yeah, I think having, movement is so tied into like our mental health, Yeah,
the movement piece is key. It's using whatever you have in front of you as a means, or like the medium, right? Like to go inward. So again, like on the way down to touching your toes, am I like, I can't touch my toes, so I'm not going to try, or I'm not going to show up? Like observing that thought that comes up in your mind. Or I keep trying to get into this challenging pose, like a handstand. I keep kicking up, I keep falling down, and then that self-talk comes in, and I'm like, you suck, you can't do this, or get frustrated in your mind, and am I beating myself up on the inside on the way up, or avoiding a certain thing, or
it almost makes me want to ask, like, is your body limited or is your mind limited?
Yeah. And the flexible part isn't necessarily about being physically flexible, but the mental flexibility.
Yeah. Having the elasticity of your brain to stretch or be patient. Like, I might not be able to touch my toes yet.
Right.
Maybe if I keep coming back or I keep showing up, I'll get there.
And then
being able to like sit with that,
Or the new thought pattern creates a different energy in your body, and then all of a sudden it's unlocked. You've unlocked that potential, right, to get down there. And it's an interesting thing, because even like with some of these technical things, like, I don't know, like an arm balance, for example, like a crow pose, where you're in essence like learning to float off of the ground. It's not necessarily about like, oh, I got that pose. It's more like an unlocking. Like that potential was already in there within your body. That's my experience anyways. But it's like, oh, like it just clicked all of a sudden. And then there was this unlocking. And there's this whole other like room of your mind and that body connection that was always there.
Yeah. It's like an exposure to a little bit more of like abundance of your capabilities, or abundance of what your mind is capable of doing, I think. Do you have like an example that you maybe it happened to you where you felt kind of that transformative shift of your state of mind, or like, for me, I'll share my example really quick and then maybe you can tag along. But so for the last, we'll call it since like October, I've been pretty good at doing yoga, at least once a week, actually showing up to the mat and like dedicating
consistently. Yeah.
Dedicating that hour. Right. And I have noticed that in my life now, when something comes up and it really disagrees with me, or I disagree with it, I don't have this like knee-jerk explosion, which I don't really ever think that I did. But now that that's even gone, however I was responding or reacting to things before is very diminished compared to how I used to, maybe let's just say like a year ago.
So it's less of a reaction and more of a response now. Like everything's slowing down.
And now if I do have a reaction that doesn't align with me, I'm able to observe it more, and it hits me harder, and I go, wow, I want to take responsibility for that now.
Right.
I did not like the way that was handled, and I need to have a conversation. I follow up with somebody, and I really do think it's because I've taken...
becoming more aware.
Yeah,
right?
I've taken time to observe, and I have dedicated hours a week, 1 to 2, where I am in observation of myself. I'm, going within. I'm in observation of my movement. And so for me, that's like a really easy example of like how this actually has really transformed my state of mind. Do you have one, like maybe in the beginning stages of when you were starting, or maybe it's constant?
Many.
It's always happening.
It's always something new. Like one thing comes to mind is just like yoga to me can bend time in essence, like just being present with your breath. Like if you're always focused on your breath, your mind has nowhere else to be, right? So if you're on that present breath, you're not thinking about the breath before or the one to come, you're right here. If you're always thinking, like past, I'm maybe diverting a little bit, but the past is said to be like a depressed state. The future is said to be anxious. You're anxious of what's to come. So if you're in the present, you're here. But being present, you have the ability to bend time. So you can make things last a little longer, right? Slow everything down. Stop to smell the roses. You're there with the breath. Then that reaction turns into more of like, okay, let me take a moment and respond. Because that split moment of thinking just happens so fast, right? But more than that too, like, I don't know, I found myself practicing in my backyard, like on my belly with back bends and like floor back bends, like Dhanurasana is a floor back bend where you're reaching back for your feet and kicking up, and it can be physically exerting. Your heart rate starts to elevate. It stimulates your sympathetic nervous system. And then I just found myself giving up at some point and like bursting into tears, and knew I needed to make changes in my life, and like I just can't fight through whatever this is right now. Ended up, good thing, bad thing, going through a divorce at the time, changed how I was living, decided, hey, this is my one life to live. I'm going to live it how I want to, and not in, I hate to say like misery, but I needed to live my life in a certain way. But that's a big one that stuck out for me is like through the practice of just putting on the face and pushing through something that was difficult to me, and just taking a moment saying like, hey, it's okay. I can take off the backpack and I don't need to push through this thing. I can surrender and say, hey, I can step back and live life differently. So that's like kind of a heavy realization, but that's the one that sticks out to me. Yeah.
It's like the movement and the consistency kind of just was able to crack you open in a way, and with maybe you weren't even doing it with that intention, but because you kept tuning in, you couldn't avoid it. Like your body,
instead of pushing through something because I knew I could, I decided I could be gentle with myself too,
and honor whatever it is that's coming up.
Well, and aren't there aspects too in yoga where they incorporate the chakras and you're unblocking energy, and with certain poses, some practitioners will kind of do like a chakra practice.
Yeah, I mean, certain postures definitely have like a different energetic effects. Back bends for one is definitely like heart chakra. It incorporates a whole bend of your spine, so it is from tail all the way to the crown of your head if you follow that energy line. So it can be fully chakra, but I think it really does hit like heart. But if you're gripping in somewhere, it kind of breaks that kink in the chain, right? So if you're not in that energetic flow, something is going to be taking more pressure than something else,
Yeah, it just made me think of like kind of what you were saying. Like there's the physical aspect and the mental aspect, but then there's probably also just this energetic aspect of if you do certain movements and sit with yourself, maybe the blocks you didn't know were there energetically get pushed out of the way and let you grow in a different way too, or have realizations.
Well, if you think of something even just like back bending, right? Like we were in chakras. So chakras are certain energy points. I'm not a professional on this, so I'll do my best with chakras and energy, but I'm a yogi, so I guess here we are. So you have 7 of them from the tail to the crown of your head. Your tailbone area is root chakra. Then you have a sacral chakra, and that's more like lower abdomen, then up a little higher. Solar plexus, your heart, your throat, third eye, and crown. And say if you are gripping in your abdomen, which is solar plexus that holds anger, then you're going to restrict that flow upward into the heart, into that expansion. Vice versa, if you're gripping in your throat and that's not open or too open, then it creates kind of like a kink in that chain, right? So the physical holding can be an energetic thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is. It could be purely physical, who knows? But yeah, if you're holding on to that anger or like in that protective state and you go into fetal position, that's the complete opposite of back bending.
It's just, it's funny because like I remember this patient when I worked at the hospital, an outpatient, we were trying to do like chest openers because she was having postural tightness. And I suggested doing like even baby camel, so super throat and chest opening. And there was like an emotional response. She said, I can't do that in yoga because I feel like I'm going to burst into tears or have a panic attack. And there was some type of trauma or something being held there. So there was physical stuff because we all have postural stuff with phones and work now. But some people get these weird energetic like releases or with frog pose.
Almost are like ashamed to burst out in tears in a room. And like I feel like that's like the biggest success story or like compliment to win.
You need to release it. Don't hold it.
Don't hold it. Let the tears flow. That's why we're here, to move that energy through. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. Like we tend to hold like, oh, I'm not going to go, do that because I'm ashamed. But that's the stuff that we need to move through. I'm not going to go to class because I'm not flexible or I'm going to be embarrassed. It's like, no, we got to put that down. Maybe yoga isn't, for us then if we, feel like we can't do that. But it is. We need to break through that and go into those dark places sometimes, the scary places.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you do private yoga too. So do you have any stories, because it probably would be in the private and not the class yoga that this would happen, but where like you help someone maybe intentionally or unintentionally overcome like stress, or they had this massive release, pain changed, like anything? It could still be physical pain.
More physically in private settings, but I do or have experienced a number of people more in the group setting, believe it or not, with tears and emotions and that sort of thing. In a private setting, there is more like conversation that can happen, like, okay, tell me how your day is, or like, that, I hate to say like kind of like being a therapist, but that talk of like the stuff that goes
what's going on with your body,
or in your life or whatever, that does, that can be a topic that comes up often, but it's more like talking through it as you're moving. But definitely been working with someone that was stiff for many, many years, and now finally in this last couple of sessions, he's starting to touch his toes.
Wow.
And there's like a softening happening. I observe a lot of that in the Mysore style room too, where people are making those connections like, oh, I don't allow myself to go into this pose because I'm resisting it, or like I'm trying to control it so I'm not feeling like I'm free in it. Stop controlling it and it'll come, or those realizations, those connections of the dots that start to happen.
Yeah, there is a real element of trust woven into like a practice of yoga, like trusting your mind or trusting your body, knowing when maybe one is playing tricks on the other type of thing. I know that
it's a
even
thin gray line, right?
Yeah, even just in I think maybe you were teaching me, it might have been another teacher at the local studio we go to, but it was something where I was shuffling my hands. I was in the forward fold, shuffling my hands under my feet, and it was like to get my heels up.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I can't. Like
because you were scared
I can't. I was
smash your face.
Yeah, I was afraid, and I was like, no, just trust. Like just trust.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I did it, and it was like, it literally gave me a sensation like I was flying. I would equate it to like catching a wave. Like
absolutely,
that's the sensation I got, was equivalent to catching a wave surfing.
Yeah, you surprised the shit out of yourself.
Yeah, I surprised myself, and I didn't eat the mat, thankfully.
Right.
But it was very cool, and it was kind of this element of trust, self-trust, and I just think, yeah, like even those tiny moments like that, like where I was guided into this thing and I ended up having such a positive result. And like learning how to take that and then apply it to other things in life. And luckily I involved myself in, a paddling and surfing community, and I'm in a gym, and I'm in scenarios where that, self-trust and fear factor is there, and self-trust, and also getting coached. That's all prevalent, but not everyone has access to that as much as I do. So I definitely think figuring out a way to find that, or to just utilize it as much as possible. If you're taking a yoga class, or you're taking some other kind of like fitness thing is.
Well, catching a wave can be scary too. You're like,
oh my gosh, deadly.
I'm going to eat shit. I'm going to drown. The board's going to hit me in the head, whatever, but you do it and then you're like, oh my God, I'm riding a wave. And that's like that adrenaline feeling, or, that
you
success.
Florida, California girl.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Surfing. I've never surfed.
We got to get you out there. We got to get you into the ocean.
My husband surfed, but not me.
So how do you think somebody who, let's say they go to like a normal fitness class, or maybe they attend like an Orange Theory or a CrossFit gym, or maybe they're paddling, like how would you describe yoga as like something that complements that? Would you... Like, I know we just talked about maybe getting the coaching and the facing the fear, but like, I know there's many other benefits.
The mobility aspect, like if you are somebody that is very immobile, or I don't know if that's the correct term to use, Hannah, tell me, immobile or restricted in their mobility.
Restrictive.
Restrictive.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yoga can help, right? Like I know, Whitney, this is something that we've talked about in some of the workshops that we've done together, is ankle mobility, and how your feet are so important, and ankle mobility and the depth of your squat, and then what goes on in that kinematic chain above, right? Your knees, your hips, and all of that. So the mobility work that we do in yoga can significantly help you with your range in the gym, right? With those movements. And being that yoga comes from a place in the East, I mean, you guys, I'm acting like an American sitting on the couch right now, and you guys are being good yogis sitting on the floor.
We're having our floor time.
I know.
Right?
Gotta get that floor time.
That floor.
I'm on a pillow though, so I don't really... Hannah's like, she's like full floor.
My left leg went numb.
Sitting on the floor is, something that people do in Asia all the time. That you're sitting on the floor to eat, to, whatever, to go to the bathroom.
They move so much better than a lot of Americans too.
Yeah, and that hip mobility is different. The toilet, for God's sakes, in most places is a hole in the ground that you need to learn how to squat over as you go to the bathroom. So having that luxury to sit on the throne, isn't there, but it, more places now do have a more Western toilet. But it's just sitting on the floor, for any activity is so helpful.
Yeah.
And that's where, everyday activities are done, in the East mostly.
I also too, I think for
Eastern culture.
For whenever you do yoga, you're not wearing shoes in the dojo.
Right.
Like there's
You're
no
aware
shoes.
of what your feet are doing.
I think it's
the
really
arches of your
important.
feet.
Yeah. Like, and it's just so, it's good to spend some time not in your hokas or your high heels or whatever the heck you're wearing, and to like pay attention to what's going on with your feet. And I just,
And getting weird with your toes,
Yeah,
like putting
getting
your
weird.
fingers
Yeah,
between
can you
your
even
toes.
feel your feet?
Yeah.
Can you move your feet? I mean, toe yoga.
Big
We need
toe-
some toe yoga
the toe yoga,
classes.
the big
It's
toe grip,
underrated.
that comes up a lot. You're holding on to your big toe, and
Yep.
you walk around and see that you can tell who the new person is in class. I'm going to call you out, new people in class, because they don't like to grab their toes,
Yeah.
But getting comfortable with grabbing your toes with that uncomfortable thing that might be like icky feeling, or like, oh, I
Or they just
between
never
my
paid
toes, or
attention
whatever.
to.
Yeah, you don't pay
Yeah.
attention to. And yeah, so feet, ankles, hips, all of that is all incorporated and has an effect on what's above. Our feet are our foundation. They hold us up all day long. And your hands too. We're using our hands as a foundational point a lot of the time, and the pelvis and some seated stuff. So, what you're aware of your wrist and how to create a support chain through the arches of your hands. We don't even think about that. You have arches in your feet.
Yeah.
We also have arches in our hand. And that creates like a structural support.
And you're really
line
never
too.
going to encounter that unless you're getting into like a plank situation, or you have your hands on the ground and you have weight in those hands on the ground. Like, that's unique to, a yoga movement.
Sure.
It could be done in like a personal training session or maybe even in a gym, but yeah, the awareness
But
behind
the
it.
overhead stuff too. Like if you're going into a snatch, you need to be able to go into an extension of your wrist, right? So, knowing that maybe one doesn't like to extend, the other one's carrying the brunt
load,
of that, and
Well, and
really
like obviously we all are very pro yoga. We love yoga. But what would you say to any of the listeners or just someone on the street who they're just not interested in yoga, but they're a very high stress life. Like all they do is work, and they need something to help kind of calm themselves down. Like we need the nervous system aspect.
Sure.
Like could you encourage that more
Well,
for
I mean,
non-yogis?
because yoga can be kind of this taboo thing, or like, yeah, like that's just not my jam, or like
I get bored. Some
Yeah.
people say that. I get bored. I'm like,
They don't know how to
get
sit with
bored.
themselves.
Well, I have like 10 personalities going on when I'm in there and I'm having conversations with everyone.
Like that M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah, like literally, what is that called? Glass or something?
No,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of
Of them, but
personalities.
yeah, I mean, for me, I interact with a lot of people who like high intensity things like weightlifting, getting stronger, interval training, and a lot of the times when I encourage going to yoga to take care of their mobility, they're like, well, I get bored though.
Well, coming back to like nervous system stuff too, like with that, and like how yoga has two different forms as well. Like some of the yin is more like putting us into that parasympathetic state, the rest and digest, and then there's more intense forms of yoga, Ashtanga being one of them, which I'm always attracted to fiery things that stimulate the sympathetic nervous system as well. But aside from just that, or showing up to a class, anything that's going to get you to like sit and be with yourself is great, or be able to observe, right? So if you like that high intensity stuff, there is that.
There's a practice for that.
There is a practice for that, but there's also the practice for the person that might not like to sit still, but needs to sit still. I tend to be that person too. So I do find something like a yin class being very beneficial. It's not about like being perfectly quiet and still. It's about, oh, I am thinking, right? Now I'm aware that I'm thinking, and that's a good thing. Becoming then aware that you're thinking and what the tendency of the thought is. And that's the practice of like meditation. But if you're not into like putting on your spandex, which, you don't have to wear spandex, you can wear whatever you want. But, find something that you connect with that allows you to observe yourself, the tendencies of yourself, and helps us just become better people.
Well, and like I have to go to yin every single week. I have such an active mind all the time. I'm very future oriented, so anxiety, the desire to escape the present moment. But going every week helps me actually decompress and get out of my mind while I'm still awake, because you can escape your mind while you're sleeping, but that's only part of a third of the day. But it's been really good to help me just get out of my brain for the week.
Consciously get out of your brain, right? Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the things I want to touch on a little bit more too is we've talked about the mental aspect, we've talked about the physical aspect, but we haven't talked about kind of what connects those two, which I really think is the breath, right? And like breath work, I know it varies in the class. Sometimes I've been to classes that start where you have some mouth breathing and then you close your mouth and then you activate your valgus nerve and then kind of like deep, not throat breathe, but kind of.
Like a more soothing breath, right? Yeah.
And
so you do a stimulating breath and then you learn to soothe. So yeah, there's all different kinds of breath work practices too. Like even just that has become kind of more trendy now, right? There are breaths that heat your body. There's a really great book too. I'm going to plug a book.
Plug it.
James Nestor's Breath, which he goes into these studies about how he closed his nose so that he could only breathe through his mouth at a certain period of time, like over a month or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly. And then did some medical tests, like how his blood pressure changed, how all these different levels changed. And over the course of our evolution, like our nose, and primitive skulls and our mouths used to be bigger. So it was better for breathing. And now that our brain has grown larger through a more high protein diet, which is a great thing, it's also made our nose and mouth smaller. So more breathing problems start to happen. And that has an effect on your mental state too. If you're always feeling like you're catching your breath or can't take a full breath, that can create some anxiousness, right? So yeah, different breathing practices too can either stimulate your nervous system on purpose, right? Create heat. And then there's some that slow everything down as well. And depending on what our tendency is, like, Hannah, you mentioned like, oh, I'm always somebody that lives in the future, and using that slowing down breath would maybe be more beneficial to bring balance. We're always looking at bringing balance, right? So yoga's all kind of about balance. And then if we're somebody that needs that like spark of fire, maybe that more stimulating breath to encourage that stoke of the fire.
I do this with some of my clients after we do like a really intense session. And I learned this through a coach when I was training for the CrossFit Games, after I'd have like a very intense, heavy lifting, heavy Metcon. I'm like on the floor doing the bacon sizzle. He would have me go to the wall and do deep diaphragmatic breathing, which is basically learning to not just send my air up into my lungs,
Which creates more of that sympathetic nervous system response, right? So if you send it lower,
so you're sending it lower, so you're trying
like
to
babies.
Puts you into recovery mode.
You're trying to basically encourage your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the
stimulate that
rest, digest, what is it?
Jakes.
Feed and breed, whatever, like, that kind of.
I haven't heard that.
Well, because, when you're parasympathetic.
Now we know what breathing to do for breathing.
Because when you're in fight or flight, you're not going to think about procreating.
No.
Like, you're going to think about, there is a lion and I got to go.
I'm running.
I'm not horny.
You're going to chest
I'm not
breathe.
horny and running. I'm just
Chest
running.
breathe. Your jaw's going to get tight. Your neck's going to get tight.
Yeah. So having the deep diaphragmatic breathing after a hard, intense workout where I probably was chest breathing because I'm just trying to survive and move a heavy barbell.
When it matches your physiologic goal.
The breathing is such an interesting part of our nervous system because it's something that happens all the time. Like we don't think about it when we're sleeping. We're breathing. Clearly, if we weren't breathing, we'd be like not waking up. We're dead. So, but we can choose to hold our breath. Like you think about going underwater. Okay, like I'm not going to breathe underwater. Clearly, I'm going to hold my breath.
Yeah.
I can choose to do that. It's a mental choice. But in those moments that you stimulated your sympathetic nervous system, now you're in that breath. And now I have to make a choice to stimulate parasympathetic nervous system. And you can do that, but it's just that barrier of the mind. So even talking about some of these more trending things like breath work and the cold plunges and the saunas and all of that, which I know, Whitney, we've had these conversations of
in the sauna,
but
in the sin box,
the sin bin. Sometimes we think about like, oh, I'm gonna like really go hard, and maybe that was my old way too of pushing through. I'm gonna sit in the torture chamber for this amount of time, or I'm gonna go into that freezing cold water because I'm just gonna power through it, right? And that maybe is counterproductive because we're putting ourselves into a place maybe where we can't hack it. So with yoga, with breath work, or any of those things where we're trying to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, we're also trying to figure out a way to self-soothe, so to speak, by bringing ourselves consciously back to parasympathetic. The bridge with that is the breath, the choice of changing the breath. And if it's something too intense, maybe we overdid it, right? And learning kind of where that line is. If I'm doing something that's too exerting, or the cold plunge is too cold, I can't hack that breath, right? So maybe that's counterproductive, or that workout maybe was too intense, or that breath hold was too intense, and now it's counterproductive. So in yoga, we're just trying to like learn where that edge is.
Yeah. It's like a mindfulness around
we know
your
where
edge,
that edge is.
your threshold.
Yeah.
I feel like we covered a lot with the breath work. And
There's
all
a
that
lot.
for the
I mean,
nervous
there's
system.
a lot going on with.
I kind of want to talk about like the myths, like yoga myths. Was there anything else you wanted to cover with the nervous system?
I did, because I wanted to talk a little bit about in any yoga class I've ever been to, we always do this, and I wanted to talk about it. Why? And because I think it's important, because I've literally done it at every single class.
Is it Shavasana?
It's Shavasana.
Oh.
And I wanted to know
What Shavasana is?
what the heck does that even mean? Because people even wear shirts. They probably don't even know what Shavasana means. And it's like, I'm here for the Shavasana. And I'm like, you probably don't even know what that means. I don't know what that means. I'm also here for the Palo Santo.
Oh, God. That could be like a whole... I could talk about this forever. But yes, let's go into it.
I just wanted to know, before we go into myths, just because like this literally...
Well, it can be a myth too. Like there's a lot of like different...
Yeah, what is the myth behind Shavasana?
It's, like us yoga teachers are all about like getting rid of our ego, but we all have one too. Like my way is the right way, or Shavasana is this and Shavasana is that. And you don't do this, you don't do that. There's a lot of like do's and don'ts, and I'm just kind of somebody that likes to look at the why behind, right? So Shavasana translates directly in Sanskrit as corpse pose. And there's some teachers that say you're not actually doing corpse pose, because corpse pose is really being able to slow your breath down so much that your heart rate is then undetectable and you could be declared clinically dead, right? Like that's the extreme of it. So corpse pose is that, and there's said to be like, those ancient yogis, they could do that, right? Like they could slow everything
They could literally die.
So much.
A little hibernation.
Yeah.
And then the monks in the Himalayas where Wim Hof got his breath work from, where they are sitting in the snow and doing this breath that creates so much heat. This is also in that breath book also, that it melts the snow around them. So Shavasana is that, right? Like coming into that rest mode. We do it at the end of the class just merely to recover. My experience with it too, my teacher Sharat said Shavasana and meditation are separate. Though Shavasana can have some meditative qualities where you're silent now, you're quiet, you're forced to sit still, which for some people, they just want to roll up their mat and run out of the room as quick as they can. Oh, no,
I want to lay there for like 35 minutes.
Sit with your mind and your thoughts. Well, again, I'm not to discount what different teachers say, but that my one teacher, Sharat, who's since passed away, always said Shavasana and your meditation practice are separate things. That meditation is a separate practice. Shavasana is a separate practice. It's not meditation, but it does, it can have some meditative qualities.
Yeah.
But as we all know, we just said earlier today, we wish there was an 8th day in the week because there's just so many things to do and
so much going on.
So much going on in our regular day modern lives. Maybe that's why we need yoga to slow down. But anyway, I remember going to one of his lead classes when we were in Mysore, India. And it was quite intense. We were all gassed after it, like just, thank God, Shavasana.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I needed this.
I want to lay.
Thank God. And literally, about 3 seconds later, he's like gathering his bag to walk out of the shala, and he goes, thank you very much. You go home, take rest. And we're like, what the hell? That was like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Thanks for the Shavasana.
You're like, that was not long enough.
And in our, cushy yoga studios back home, 5 minutes, a nice relaxing song. Like, thank you very much. You go home, take rest. And I came to realize it doesn't need to be such a long thing, right? It's really just a moment to gather your breath after something intense and let yourself recover for a minute. That's really all it needs to be if you're not somebody that likes a long shavasana and you just went through something intense, but it can hold that meditative quality to it.
So it's a moment of rest.
It's a moment of rest. Let yourself recover. Let the practice settle in. Maybe some days it can be a long thing. Maybe some days it doesn't have to be a long thing. But that meditative quality or meditation practice can come from other areas. It doesn't necessarily need to be in shavasana.
Yeah.
But then in the other extreme, you've got that, other teacher that says you're not really doing shavasana unless your
heart rate
dead.
is unless
I feel like I would need more than a moment to get to that point.
to get clinically dead.
I would need to kind of just like marinate in that state for a little bit.
I've had a couple of shavasanas where I've experienced something really similar to what I've done a sensory deprivation tank, and
you feel that floating sensation.
Yes, a very like and also just like this
cover.
Yeah, it's almost
out of body.
Yeah, like I leave, but I'm also with myself, and it's very cool because both of those times I've been very clear with myself. Like I'm talking to me and it's me talking to me. It's not an idea or a societal thing or an expectation.
You became the observer.
Yes.
You put yourself in that observation. So in yoga and the 8 limbs, the last 3, we have dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Your dharana is your focal point, which oftentimes we use as breath, or it can be a mantra, something that's grounding. The dhyana is meditation, the actual state of meditation. And then samadhi is that like blissful, euphoric state where everything is connected. Like I can see you and me and you, and, and being that observer, everything is clear. And we have glimmers of that in life, right? There's these little, moments maybe that we experience that, but the nature of the world brings us back to that humanness. Then I always use the analogy, go out in season in Jupiter, Florida in traffic, somebody honks their horn and gives you the bird, and now all of a sudden you're like, fuck you too. And you're out of samadhi.
All right. You want to go today.
Right, now I'm a yogi, namaste. Here's my
double finger.
Yeah. Or you give them the meditation mudra instead, right?
Yeah.
So, there's those glimmers of it, but something usually takes us back to that humanness.
Yeah. I really like the idea of the shavasana being not this long, I need to reach death, heart rate.
It puts expectation on what it needs to be. If you just show up and you say, I'm just here to recover, maybe we'll get lucky enough to reach that, right?
Well, I love that it has, like, for it to have accessibility like that for people to be able to like rest and come back into themselves at a different point, right? Yoga off the mat at a different point of the day. I mean, I do this with a lot of my clients. I have them practice bracing, which is dead bugs. So they learn how to brace their body so they can access that at any particular time during their life outside of the gym, because like that's probably most likely when they're going to hurt themselves and when they need to access it. And it's like, I need to access this shavasana. I need to access this moment of rest differently than just being on the mat after I'm exhausted. I might need to access it when I'm behind somebody who's testing my patience in line at the grocery store.
That's where the real yoga practice comes into play. They whack you in the ankles at Publix with your shopping cart and you just want to turn around and deck them.
No, it's Costco.
Right? Costco.
Costco gas station.
I thought it was the parking lot. Yeah,
the parking lot at Costco is
but also
miserable.
just the Costco in general. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I want to know if yoga is a religion.
Oh, that's a good question. There's some taboo with that too. Another thing that my teacher Sharat always said is yoga is not a religion. It is, like a practice. Anybody can do it. It doesn't mean you have to be a Hindu or you can't be a Christian it's a practice of just getting to know yourself, to become a better person, getting to know your tendencies. It's not that you have to worship a higher power a certain way or not.
Or Buddha,
or it's not Buddhist.
Buddhism.
Although, it does come from the East. It comes from Indian culture. And because of that, a lot of the postures are named after deities in that culture. That's the nature of it. And there's some back and forth about, you know, the West is taking India, Eastern culture out of the practice. I think that it's very important to honor where it came from and not like take it. You know, we don't want to be like, okay, this is yoga, and not honor where it originated and the roots of something. But it doesn't mean that it's not for you because you're not a Hindu, right? So,
and it shouldn't impact, you know, your ability to be a Catholic or a Christian and also go to yoga.
And to me, I mean, it can be kind of sad when, because we are that, it impacts us or prevents us from going to learn something new or that experience. It kind of, you know, it kind of saddens me a little bit. Like, don't let that hold you back. Just experience it. And, you know, there's a lot of correlation. Prayer and meditation are a lot alike. Even with the rosary beads or a mala bead, you're doing the same thing, right? So it is a practice of being present and meditation and getting to process your thoughts through prayer or through meditation. And we just call it something different, in my opinion.
I think what I wanted to talk about, and we talked about this earlier, of yoga being boring. There is an element of yoga is transformative. Stillness can be transformative. How do you coach someone, or what would you say to somebody who is thinking that this transformation needs to be this catabolic big thing?
Yeah. Like,
you know, like an explosion. Like I transitioned or I transformed and I went from this
all of a
to
sudden,
this.
I'm enlightened.
Yeah, I'm enlightened. Right? Like my knee is in my armpit. I am enlightened.
Yeah.
Is that enlightenment to you?
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, sometimes there's those moments where you're like, you know, take like something like crow or scorpion, for example. Scorpion's a back bend where your toes are touching your head. You feel your toes hit your head. You're like, holy shit. That's like a cool feeling. There could be those moments, but that doesn't mean you learn something because of it, right? But most of like the transformation is trickling in. It's a lifelong practice, right? That
slow drip.
A slow drip. Sometimes, you know, there's that expectation too, and I do run teacher trainings, or, you know, I'm doing a yoga retreat for the first time this year with Chelsea from Village Yoga. There's this expectation that just because I showed up to teacher training or to the retreat, that I'm going to have some sort of an epiphany, or all of a sudden I'm going to be healed, right? And a lot of that expectation is put on the teacher too. Like, you got to help me fix myself, or like, you know, oh, they didn't help me heal myself or become enlightened. That's, you know, clearly not for me.
I'm not going back to that retreat.
Right. Yeah. But there's that expectation that something, like you said, huge, catabolic has to happen in order for there to be, you know, some change. And it's not that. It is a slow drip.
Yeah. And
the healing process is the yoga practice, the healing process is a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
And some of it really will happen in the stillness, which is kind of that oxymoron of change, movement, newness, new patterns happening in nothingness.
I'm going to try yoga. I'm going to do teacher training. Then I'm going to go on the retreat. Then I'm going to go do ayahuasca. Then I'm going to do the bufo toad. And then I've got to get, you know, acupuncture from Hannah. And Hannah didn't fix me, so I'm going to go to Whitney. And Shelby, you know, Shelby didn't fix me, so I went to, you know, this person or that person.
Like the busyness took away from maybe what's actually going on there, right? You distracted yourself with all these different techniques and all these ways to heal and fix yourself versus
inward
address what's happening.
It's an inside job.
Yeah. And that's why it can be a slow drip.
I don't know if you wanted to ask anything else. I feel like that was a good thing to, like, the last thing to ask, because we had a good run without the construction workers building, and I think they were on lunch. I don't know if we're going to be able to hear them in this. I think we'll be okay, but was there anything else that, like, you wanted to ask before we
I just want to, I want Shelby to talk a little bit about, so Shelby is a local...
Crushing the workout. There is that slow drip component.
Yeah. So, like, what is the best yoga workout, I would say, quote unquote? Like, I know it's very obvious when people have great workouts, and I coach a lot of clients through this too. Some of their quote unquote worst workouts is actually where they're making the most progress as far as like patience, learning new movements, honoring their body, paying attention to what's going on, shifting the workout. So somebody who, you know, a lot of the times they think that's oh man, I did terrible today. We had to change it. All this stuff is going on. But as a coach, I go, wow, that was actually like a really good workout.
Right.
And I would think a very similar thing would happen in yoga, where you think somebody's really owning it on the mat, nailing each position, but really maybe the best yoga workout was they were in child's pose, like the whole yoga class.
That's so true. So just, you know, the yoga practice where I'm nailing every handstand or nailing every balance, or I feel very strong or light, like that feels really good. I'm not going to lie. I have all those kinds of days, the days where I feel fat and heavy and everything's like a ton of bricks to get up, or I just don't want to be there on my mat that day. And then I have those days where everything's
my yoga pants are too tight.
Yeah.
I'm a sausage today.
I just need to buy bigger pants. Or I feel like very light and contrast and everything comes very easy. That feels very good, but a lot of the time I'm not meeting that friction, or, you know, it's about sometimes meeting that friction of the challenge, the mental challenge, or the tears come, or things do feel icky. And then there's that breakthrough moment. It's not necessarily that day where everything feels light and easy, or killing it, nailing it, right? Like,
are you really killing it or nailing it?
Right.
Or did you just have a good body day?
And we call, you know, there is another, you know, philosophical term in yoga. They call it tapas, and that's the fire, right? So how do you alchemize something? Is you put it in the fire to change. Well, that friction that you creates the change. So when there's some sort of friction, like, a physically intense workout can create some physical change in your body. You get stronger, you start to get a nice booty, some abs, like that's all bonus, right? But that physical friction can inspire that internal change as well. And sometimes that's not a physical thing. It's just crumbling into child's pose and in tears. And that's a success.
Yeah.
Or just laying
there.
there.
Because you've honored something that's going on within you. You've observed, and now you're letting go.
That's the real success story, I think, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Where can people find you if they want to take a class?
So I teach currently, and hopefully forever and ever and ever, at the Village Yoga in Tequesta, Florida. I also manage the studio there. I'm there right now Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. I'm there for teacher training. I'm launching a 300-hour teacher training.
Wow.
Which is the next level of certification for yoga teachers through Yoga Alliance. I also do some outdoor stuff, so some community classes by donation. I lead the Wednesday and Friday classes at Sawfish Bay Park at 5:30.
And that's Jupiter Yoga?
And Jupiter, yep. I have my own business name too, Jupiter Yoga, where we do some beach classes in the summertime near the full moon. I'll probably bring that back. Little, time to connect afterwards. And what a beautiful backdrop of the ocean. And I also started teaching at the Jupiter Lighthouse Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. I'm hoping to bring a Saturday sculpt class at 9:30. There's a little cheeky hut over there.
That would be cool.
So I got my booty bands and my Jane Fonda outfit, little baby weights for Saturday mornings. But yeah, Jupiter Yoga, you can check it out. I have a website.
We'll put all that in the Spotify and the Apple podcast
in the description
too, for everyone to access.
I'm a yogi, and I need to get on updating it. I'm really patient and slow with that.
It's okay.
So
we're all continuing
true
to learn.
yogi.
True yogi.
Well, thank you so much. This has been just like such a good conversation. I feel like we could talk for hours about the benefits of yoga. It doesn't sound like there really isn't.
Endless.
It's endless.
Unlimited.
It's unlimited benefits.
Hey, bottom line, I don't want to sell you on yoga. Like, I just want you to show up and try it. If I have to sell you on it.
I mean, what a better way to get in touch and learn a little bit more about yourself than going to
physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Yeah. Show up at a yoga class. Cool. 5:30 at night. I'll be there at Village, so you'll find me there.
Yeah.
All right. I guess we just are gonna say thank you for listening. Subscribe, leave a review, follow us on social media. You can follow us individually. We'll link everyone, Shelby's handle, as well as Dr. Hannah Shay's and my own. I'm Whitney Stevenson. I'm joined with
Hannah Shays.
And we want to say thanks for listening to Beyond the Reps.
What your physical therapist and trainer forgot to tell you.